Okay, we'll double check to make sure.
Good morning. Welcome to the Audit Committee. Time is now 10:44. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order with the last Gavin to do the roll call.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner. Right now, we do have a quorum with 3 of the 5 members present. So far, Dr. Thomas and Mr. Blunt are not in attendance. So,
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item C, is to review and approve the minutes of the last meeting, which was March 7th, 2024. Hope everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes. If so, can I get a motion to approve of the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
real quickly, can we do it with the edit that Ms. Higgins forwarded to us, I think, a couple days ago in an email that we were it was a minor edit regarding ex officio.
Oh, yes,
Status.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I thought that might have been corrected.
No, we will
Corrected,
go ahead and correct that.
corrected.
though.
Yes, I make a motion to approve the minutes with that amendment, that small change.
Okay,
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been motion to pass by Commissioner Myers, second by Ms. Higgins. All in favor
I
and opposed? Thank you. Item D, FY 24 audit work plan and activity.
sure. Thank you, Commissioner. So this is just a recap of our current year's work plan activity. As you know, we revised the work plan a few meetings ago. Sorry about that. To account for some scheduling adjustments, that was to remove HCD from the current work plan, and then also adjust for economic development and HR, given some of the changes at staffing level with HR. And that was approved by the Mayor Commission at their April meeting. So that is good to go now for the remainder of the year. The periodic audit of the tax assessor's office was also accepted at that same meeting in April, and that was a unanimous vote by the commission. So well done to the audit committee as well for their input and work on that. With regard to, I will kind of skip and go to human resources first before I get to economic development, but we are actively working on the human resources department audit, and that is not a departmental audit, but more of the employee recruitment, hiring, and orientation. It's a focused audit. And we have completed the planning phase, the field work phase, and we are about 50% underway with the reporting phase as well. So everything, for the most part, looks to be on track. Now, I will say, even from the timeline that you all adjusted at the last meeting in March, there has been an additional change at the staffing level with HR that we do want to be cognizant of. And so, with that said, the earliest I think that we would get you get the audit for HR on the Mayor and Commission cycle would be September, October. I'm sorry, August, September, and the latest would be the September, October. We just aren't quite sure yet which one will land because it's a real fine tune between a couple days of do we miss the cycle deadlines and do we not, as well as aligning with some of your meetings. So hopefully I'll have more information for you on the next one as to where we land, but give or take a month on that timeline right now. But nonetheless, I think the bulk of the workload is going to be done by June by staff. It's just a matter of going through the cycle of approvals at that point. So with that, we'll get to our economic development status, and we have completed the economic development periodic audit. You all have been given a copy of that, including the response from the director. We do have Manager Williams here as well to help give any input or answer questions with regard to those responses, as well as what management's response may be. And we are going to look for a formal recommendation, if this body feels inclined today, to move that forward for the Mayor and Commission and be on the May-June cycle for acceptance of that audit. So I will just say this is a little bit different from the first one that you looked at with the tax assessor, given that the tax assessor is a bit of a separated function from under the purview of the manager's office. This one is the first one that we're looking at with regard to being under the manager's role, and we're all sort of learning as we go a little bit as well. And so this, given the time lapse since this has sort of occurred, some of the processes and procedures are still being hashed out, but I still think we're in the right direction and we're still on time to go ahead and move this forward. But if you do have any questions about the audit with either us or the manager, I think would be a great time today for us to all sort of talk about it and discuss it. 3 recommendations ultimately came out of the economic development audit, similar to the tax assessor. There wasn't anything, I think, that was earth shattering. Quite honestly, we want to thank economic development staff for their time and their cooperation throughout the whole process. They were good to work with. And some of the recommendations we felt were certainly important. We think they align with, the goals and initiatives of not only this government, but the mayor and commission, and are certainly possible. So, that said, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
I do have a process question
Yeah.
here. So with the recommendations, the findings, the recommendations and responses. So at this point, I have two questions kind of like, so at this point, this would be put forward to the mayor and commission with this discussion and response. Is that correct?
It would be with the caveat that you all don't have any changes, or we as staff today recommend any kind of conditional changes to go forward, which we may very well,
I do have one.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So, and that's it. And the other thing I'd like to say, just to reiterate, and it's good that the manager Williams is here. I mean, I have not focused in quite as much as I'd like to, but I have reviewed them. I just want to say that actually I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the back and forth. And if it's something where a department has a response and it's a good response and it's a discussion about what's going on, I like that. To me, that seems healthy. So I just want to say that overall, to me, if I get all the reports back and all the, everyone just agrees, and it moves forward, and there's no, discussion of this, we can't, this shows the continuous improvement and reflection. And so if this is something that, again, what the department and the manager's office are reflecting back and responding, if we do that all respectfully and thoughtfully, that's great, without it being, retribution and going after people. So I greatly appreciate that back and forth without going into any details. And so I just want to say that for the record.
And yeah.
I know Ms. Higgins, you had several questions that you want to ask.
Yes, indeed, and I fully appreciate what Mr. Myers has said. I think that's really worthwhile. My question in terms of the process was whether there should be any answer to the answer or any discussion, because it's kind of left out there a little bit. And the follow-up would be a year later. So a year later, we say, well, did we follow in the recommendations? Well, we didn't agree with the recommendations. We think this. Then you're a whole year. If there's any issue, and I think here, like you mentioned, these are not really, earth-shattering findings. They are progressive and important kind of accountability functions that maybe need adjustment, maybe don't, and that's going to be based on the manager, how he feels that the accountability function in economic development should be kind of nailed down. But that was the only thing as far as process was, should there be an answer to the answer? I had mentioned in the email whether the manager had weighed in on kind of that response. Is this the direction we're going? Is this, the performance measures, particularly that's one I'm most interested in. Is that going in a direction that we are going to be qualitative more than quantitative, and the quantitative ones need to go out the window because they're not really representative of what ED does or how they do it? And that's an important discussion to continue on, I think.
Is.
And so that was in terms of the process itself. In terms of the particular issues, I think there's more discussion there, and plus the fact that this is what's going to go and will be posted, so the community will see that, and there is a little bit of a tone of pushback, kind of hard pushback on some, and that's good. But I don't think it should be left kind of undiscussed on one level more, to say we think that these are really interesting objectives. We'll incorporate this into our evaluation of ED in the future and for next year. what we'll be looking for is this, the
Mhm.
continuation of that discussion.
So I think what I'll do is I'll certainly turn to Manager Williams to sort of answer the question in terms of the response itself. What I will say from a process standpoint is I don't anticipate us going back and as staff, as operational analysis staff, adding sort of a follow-up response. What I will say is that today, if there are amendments or corrections or changes, we can certainly make those, and we can even add additional finding or response from the manager today if you all agree to move that forward. When it comes to your discussion as an audit committee, that will be reflected in the agenda report if we need to as well about any specifics that you may have. But I think with these reports, it's important to strike that 50-50 balance where we as staff have had an opportunity to basically create a 30-page document on our side. And we want to acknowledge their opportunity as a department to respond accordingly. It may not be even the same level, obviously, as 30 pages, but we don't want to diminish that. And what I don't want to get back into either is sort of a quid pro quo of back and forth
Right,
and back
right.
and forth. But certainly if Manager Williams has any additional clarification on the manager's response, we can incorporate that into the report.
Before you respond, Manager Williams, I do, and Ken, I'm not sure whether or not you may agree with me and may not. And again, depending on when the commissioners get this and what's gonna be in that, and depends on whether we correct or make adjustments. I think a year, I feel like the commission may want a response before a year, possible. I don't know that, but it may be just want to start preparing so that, hey, why should we wait a full year if those something that we can correct earlier or say we have a stalemate. Possible. Like I said, I know we don't want to do the back and forth, but at the same time, I think the commissioners may want to say, well, if we're a stalemate, where can we go? And maybe we don't need to wait a whole year to make this happen. We can go ahead and see something now.
And I think you all, as either an audit committee in your recommendation or the mayor and commission, can certainly say, well, we accept this or we move this on with the condition that the review or the follow-up happen within 6 months instead of a year. And we can certainly try to honor that.
I'm just
Yeah.
sort of trying to play a little bit double advocate. What the commission may look like in the future. So.
Okay. Well, thank y'all. And that's exactly, I had process related questions when I just spoke to the auditor before the meeting to make sure it was appropriate. And I want to echo what Commissioner Meyer said. It's a unique function of this government and foretold by the folks that put the charter together that, when done well, it's a very helpful function. And it speaks to the professionalism of staff in the Office of Operational Analysis. I think these audits are well done. I think they're done pretty promptly and very comprehensively. So we have appreciated that. And I will tell you that there's nothing that we do that should not be able to withstand scrutiny, right? And so we need to be looked at. And if we're doing it all openly and in good faith, I think it is a healthy process. And Ms. Higgins, I agree with you as well that in American government, you hear us say it often. Disagreement is actually a good thing because it means that different perspectives are at the table, and then hopefully compromise comes out of it. Y'all have heard some folks have heard me say that a lot. So I think it's great, and I think that this is a well done audit. What I do want to recognize though is it's one of the first that we've had in a while, and we've had a lot of turnover in the organization, like many others have. And so we're sort of getting used to this, and then we're having some new rigor that is being brought in process, which I think is awesome. We're learning it. In this case, y'all, as the manager, I did not have the opportunity to contribute these comments, and that's on our office and our communication. Nothing that the auditor's office has
You mean
done.
the comments that are in reply?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they did not go through you.
That's right.
Okay.
But they did go through the manager's office.
Okay.
We just didn't communicate on it, and folks that have not ever done this before were involved, and so we're learning. That's on me. That's on me.
Okay.
But I would like to clarify some of the comments, and particularly the one with number 3. And so I want to say that the 3 findings I think are all extremely reasonable. I think cross training is an excellent idea. I think training our board members is an excellent idea. And I will tell you that I think that specialized performance metrics are an excellent idea. So no, there's no, Ms. Higgins, Chair, there's no disagreement on those. I think where the details start to happen is, well, to your point, in the case of the performance measures, is it qualitative or is it quantitative? And the answer is somewhere in the middle most of the time. But what I'd like to ask as a matter of process, we can get into content. If you read, so those words are primarily those of the department director. And the strongly disagree, if you read it in context, is not so much about whether or not there should be performance metrics, but around the concept of remote work. And I would argue that that was not the nature of the finding, but it is a corollary to it, perhaps.
Right, yeah.
It was, remote work was used in the observation. So I'm not here to speak for other people, only myself. And I would say that I would like to, this is out there. And so I appreciate your questions about process and form and what it looks like. My questions to the auditor before the meeting were, what is the appropriate way to amend this? Is it possible? To your point, it is going to go out to the public and,
Right.
and the mayor and commission. And my understanding is whatever gets sent to the commission is what you approve today or in some future meeting. That's what gets sent. So that being said, I would like the ability to offer just a couple of sentences in agreement with finding number 3. And I do believe that it's going to be a mix of qualitative and quantitative because y'all, we are trying to transition to a more, data-driven, data-informed organization. And the plain truth is that quantitative analysis lends itself to certain functions better than others. For instance, public utilities or public works. We do a lot of unit cost, quantity stuff. These things are happening. And then we have other departments, and the director makes this point in there, that are more relational. I mean, all departments are relational, but some are more based on leveraging human cooperation. And that's a little harder to quantify. But I do believe that some of the quantifiable metrics that were offered by the Office of Operational Analysis are valid. And I do believe that some of the comments made by the director as far as some of her suggestions are also valid. So that all speaks to what then in the next year or so. And I think that in the wake of today and whatever the recommendation in this body is, that there'd be some further discussion between the office and our staff. Certainly there's going to be conversations on our staff side as we've kind of been given a recommendation, and then the commission and this audit committee may support that recommendation, which then would drive us to do a better job of trying to define what those are, with the end in mind of coming back and reporting what we did come up with and what it looks like. Okay. And to the internal auditor's point, that's not necessarily a negotiation because they have to move on too, because they have other things in their work. But we certainly should have open communication about what that looks like. No surprises, maybe a heads up like, hey, this is what we're going to start tracking. In the hopes of coming back in 6 months or a year and reporting on that. So there's a little bit of a ramble there, but at the end of the day, I'd like to ask the group if they would consider that with the report that you're looking at there, that we just denote the comments that are in there as the department directors, and that I add a couple of sentences saying that the manager is generally in favor of this recommendation of performance metrics, and that there will be efforts made by staff to define both qualitative and quantitative measures that are appropriate to help provide some accountability in a 100% remote environment, virtual environment, that work is being accomplished. So that's what I'd like to propose. I will also tell you that some of the words in here are not mine. As a matter of fact, and we're having a healthy debate on remote work. But at this point, y'all, we're a couple of years past COVID, and I believe there's a lot to be gained in close proximate human interaction, and that we will probably be amending our remote work policy to add another day in the office. I'm working through that with HR right now, just to let you know that this isn't just a reaction to this, but it's a bigger discussion that we're having about, because on the flip side, people really appreciate in this war for talent, the ability for flexibility. But on the other hand, you know, when we don't have frequent human interactions on similar topics, then there's something missed, I think, can be argued. And I've not read all the literature on all of this, but this is more of a managerial philosophy that I subscribe to. But I am actively petitioning our HR personnel, our management personnel, on their feedback. So this is a little bit different, but I want you to know we're kind of moving in a direction with remote work anyway. And then, so some of I do want to not own some of the comments that were in here. And I would like to respectfully ask that we amend the plan to include those couple of extra sentences.
I actually looking over this now again, and I did not, after May 21st, I'll look at everything a lot more closely. But I would also, as someone who did my like doctoral work in qualitative evaluation, but actually excelled in quantitative. So I wasn't just doing it as a way to get away from the quantitative, that the inclusion, the response of qualitative is important. I did see that disjunction between the response, which seemed to be on remote work, where the recommendation really did not focus on remote work. And some of the things that go along with remote work also go along with the accountability, can go along with work that is not office based. So if someone is out there, the business, I mean, like someone comes by and checks on buildings and things like that. I mean, you're not following that person. I mean, maybe who knows, but I mean, there's other things too that aren't accountable in that sense. So I'd like the management response in there. Like the fact, like I kind of want to cross out the word strongly, but it's not mine. I should say disagree, because it seems more confrontative than it needs to be. Even though with the same exact stuff in there, you know, the same exact material in there. And so I am okay with that, because I think in some way the response doesn't follow through. And I also wonder, just in terms, I'm going off topic with the remote work thing. You know, I've been knocking on doors and I keep finding young people at home doing remote work. But I also know my daughter does remote work, but she does remote work from Montreal to labs all around the world that aren't really, you know, focused on a city and its functioning. And so I don't know how that also plays into the remote work policy. That's just an aside about how remote work works, because some businesses are based all kind of virtually. And that's a little different situation. Anyway.
Yeah, I've kind of like 3 points here. I also, just off the top, think it's a very appropriate in this particular case, especially since there's a disparity in the approach to the management response. And again, the tone of the response is what really kind of got me, more than what they actually said, that it was, and strongly disagree, that actually captures that. So you don't want it to be argumentative. You don't want it to be, you want the response, but you don't want it argumentative. And then with management response, you can soften that, right? You can soften that and say, yes, these are appropriate discussions to have. And there is maybe different kind of positions, but we're going to the same direction, which is transparency and accountability, which is what the whole purpose is. So I think the management response will soften that tone, which is what just kind of worried me a little bit when this goes to the public, because it was just more of an emotional response than an intellectual one. And you saw this at all here, we got some tension here that's, you know, so we don't want that. So we want the audit function to be something that is collaborative. We want something that is really positive, something that contributes to the function. And then to point out, again, the transparency and accountability, which is the primary reason that we do it. And of course, I'm sure that the management wants that as much as the community does, as much as we would like to see that. So my next point is economic development is really tricky. First of all, it's a young function here. I mean, it's been in the charter, but it's only like 10 years old, and it had quite a bit of turnover and a lot of new staff members. So, and they are starting their function in a very disruptive period in terms of management and how things are working. So they're really doing a great job considering all the restrictions and the things that they've had. So trying to create the proper work environment for themselves as they do this, as you're trying to manage through the restrictions, I think that they're doing a great job. And they want to be protective of the things that they've learned that have worked for them. But the other side is that also the other things that are developing with economic development in the whole world of economic development is changing and growing. And the evaluation, the performance evaluation of economic development is also changing. So the particular aspect you're saying about quantitative performance measures, they have found have been counterproductive to some economic development functions, normally in larger cities and things that they're finding if they're focusing on that quantitative thing, they're missing a lot of other things. And then they're trying to get their points, so to speak, to satisfy their things.
Right.
And
That's right.
they're not doing what you want them to do, right? Because they're trying to get credit for the jobs, or credit for the new business, or credit for this and that, and they're not necessarily doing the comprehensive job that you want. They are a catalyst organization, economic development. And so you want them to be catalyst. You want them to help everybody else do their job and be able to capture things that they do and well. The other problem with economic development is they have to be, a lot of their work has to be not in the public eye, at least initially. Right? So that's a little bit hard. So we've got all these new tax allocation districts, and that's also new. And we're hoping that that's going to work really well and do the goals there. But there's been a lot of failures in that around the country in different places, so that it has to be managed well. And one of my questions was all these new advisory boards for these TADs, these are all different people on 6 different advisory boards?
Yes, correct.
And that's being administered by one staff person.
Yeah, that's a lot, right?
It is, and that, just a few years ago wasn't the focus of economic development. So that's another add-on that they have, I think, done a good job with. And much like we were talking about a new process, I mean, this is a new process,
Right.
and each district is very unique.
Is different. Right. So this whole complex thing is a great challenge for them. And so that last point about the training,
And I
that-
did get an answer for you on that.
yeah, I think that's really important that we offer as much training and as much information that we can for those groups. And then for economic development, if they are the primary staff support for them to be as trained and educated. Again, a little bit pushback from the back training, we don't have to do that. Here we're trying, we're supporting them and all that, but to soften that a little bit in the manager's response on that, that yes, indeed, this is what they've been informed, and but it isn't, we still think it's important for them to do that for all the reasons that all of us have to.
Right. And I, having done lots of training where sometimes things seem like just click, 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 click. I mean, I thought the training was useful and productive and covered what it needed to do. So I was pleased by that. I think the attorney's office did a great job on that. So
The BAC training, the
the
ethics
BAC
training, yes.
right, the training overall and the running the meetings and things like that. I
And
thought
it'll answer a lot of questions for the members. It really, puts a point on both ends. So you really know where your limits are. And again, TADs are tricky because they're dealing with huge amounts of money, tendency over 20 years, what they're supposed to be looking at developing. And it's not easy to figure out how that's working. Is it working? And what the responsibilities are in terms of transparency and for the public.
It's
And
in a
where
very
not.
political process.
It's very political, right? Exactly.
And I think also we're running to some of these tags, how much training that the people that we'll bring on those tags know about the tag. So,
Right, so there needs to be another like unit to
Yeah,
do this.
another
What is a
piece,
TAD?
Still to me, I'm still learning
Right.
about tags, how these folks operate and work. So when the mayor or sometimes the commission asks people to sit on these tags, probably should be something, maybe from our end, I'm not sure what end, that the folks that sit on those tags get some type of training.
Right.
So they understand, first of all, what it's gonna be the impact on your community and what it's gonna mean moving forward.
And perhaps even, some maybe bias and
Right,
training,
exactly.
because it
Right.
becomes very,
Right.
easy to get influenced by one person rather than another person
Right.
when you're in that area.
And then when people in the community come to you, if they know you're on the tag, how do you answer their question? What's your takeaway or, you know, or what's your understanding of the TAD? And the people who serve it don't know.
And what you can discuss and how you can discuss it.
Exactly. Yes, I
Alright.
think, as you said, we're learning as we go. So I think moving forward, and again, I'm not sure how we can do that as an audit committee, or maybe as a commission to address that when we're bringing people on these tags
Mhm.
to get that type of training. So-
And really all our BACs for that matter.
Exactly, yes, yes. So let me do this if I'm in order. Because manager, wanna, add something to this. Should we wait? Again, I'm not sure what our timeline is.
Do we need to address the
I can offer
process,
something
make
for
an
you now.
offer to, you know?
I don't want to complicate this, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No,
I can offer just a couple of sentences perhaps, if you want to move things forward. I don't see this as very difficult, but if you want to wait, that's fine too. But I've written a couple of sentences out so that y'all can capture what is being said.
So, yeah, I just didn't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, again, I refer to you, Carol.
Well, I just want to know if we have, I want to know what we have defined already as a process,
sure.
so that we are not caught doing something that's outside of that process. So that's what I want to know, if we need to make a motion to adjust this. I sort of like it if we had some sort of motion here to set, refer this back to the manager for manager's comments
And that's why I was sort of going.
officially.
Should we wait? No, I'm not sure when we were gonna make this presentation to the.
Well, so I think
commission.
I can offer two things. I don't think anyone today or even what we've discussed is out of process. This is
Yeah.
exactly what this process is meant for. But what I would suggest is one of two options. Either you as a committee can wait to hold this and basically allow the manager to develop something, and you can take this back up again at your next meeting. Or you could take into consideration what the manager's office is suggesting today and basically vote as a board to move this along in the process with the condition that it includes an amended manager's response as discussed today, and we'll just fold that in as it goes forward. If you keep it on track today, it will go to the mayor and commission May, June. We'll make that timeline. That said, this is up to y'all, and I'm not here to pressure y'all. If you want to wait, just know though that with summer break of the commission, this won't get passed until August, September,
But-
ish.
But it's,
Or,
I mean,
sorry,
if
July.
we passed it today, you're saying this would be on the agenda for the June meeting to
Yes,
vote on.
That's correct.
Okay, I think it's really important that we see exactly what the manager is
Yeah, I do
writing.
too.
Okay,
And so I'd rather hold it. I don't
Yeah.
leave a lot else going on.
And it really give you some time that you may have a discussion with the director.
That's fine.
Yep.
Well, I have two sentences. My suggestion is two sentences and just denoting, not removing anything in the report, just denoting it as the department director's response. But I'm fine to
I
wait.
do have another comment on this in terms of this, is thinking about this is out in the public and so forth. And you're talking about the tone. When I looked through it just really quickly, I found like 2 words that indicated to me a tone that someone could be using for some offhand attack that would just distract from what's in here. And really one I mentioned, and then, so I just want to make sure that I don't know, if you're saying that the manager's office didn't review this just in terms of
No, I didn't.
presentation, you didn't, as right. So I would like you to have a chance to look at that, to give input. I mean, if you're doing this in that time, because I'm not talking about changing the content,
Right.
but any wording that is unnecessarily provocative,
Okay,
that'll distract us from the thinking here. I mean, I like, I sit literally have one phrase, and I could probably come up with something that would say exactly the same thing and not be clickbait for.
okay. Well, and I want to own this as just communication within our office. I didn't know what the appetite was to actually change anything, and in trying to preserve the public record, I was just going to add some things to clarify. But if you want to give us extra time and you're willing, I can go back and we can reword this.
I would like just a review of, I don't
Yeah,
want major
Me neither,
things.
yeah.
I
yeah.
mean, like I said, I think there's just
Yeah.
thinking about, I want the message that's here to come out rather than it to be something that it can just be used as an attack on this
Gotcha.
or that. I want us to have meaningful, continuous improvement, not create political.
And I get, and I get, we could do that, and I'm okay, with that, but again, I don't, don't wanna, I see what word I use. What the audit committee has done, I wanna make sure that, the public knows, they're doing what they're supposed to do, but at the same time, if there's gonna be, that's what I call a rebuttal, economic development, we can put that in there. At the same time, leaving what the audit committee has done, recognizing that as the department grows and other things are added to it, these are some things that we can see in the future showing some improvement on. And I think that's what this is all about, again. And I don't want them to be criticized because they strongly disagree, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, we can leave that word in here, but I do think there's one or two phrases there. And I just want, and maybe this is something to learn from. I mean, are you telling me that the process, if it had happened the way you would prefer it to happen, you would have reviewed this respectfully with the department and maybe tweak certain things, and that didn't happen the way that you would like it to happen?
Yes, in the past and in the previous audits that I've been a party to, there is a meeting where the managers, the relevant assistant managers over the department director, and any relevant staff they invite, we work through this.
Yeah.
And we talk about language, we talk about response, we talk about, we try and honor a dissenting opinion, but at the end we try and come out with something that makes sense, which is sort of doing that compromise on the front end as opposed to the back end. And I didn't have the opportunity to do that. And that's what I'm trying to do now. And I'll certainly take any extra time that you have, and I can rework the entire section. Or if you want to preserve that, we can leave that and I can just add extra language on top of it. But either way, I would like the ability to amend the response.
Okay. Thinking about the process too, so incorporating this step before.
But from here on out, we shouldn't do this again. It'll be coordinated before it gets
That's what
here.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's
it
what I'm
was-
saying.
it
That
was-
from the auditor's office to say that when the responses, when they get the draft,
Mhm.
and they say, make sure this is, I would say make sure coordinated chain of command of two military, but
Right.
that all
Confer
your
with
all
the
the
match,
checks and
right,
balances that you
Yeah.
do, or require the responses to go through the manager's office before it comes to you, or whoever's in charge of them.
Sure.
Now, that might put a limitation on you that maybe they might feel that some of the things that you really need feedback from, that they might be wary of giving,
Well, I'll just clarify, and again, let's all take this with consideration that this is the first time in a couple of years that this
Right.
has
Yeah.
happened, so I think, but from our standpoint, both tax assessor and this one, and then going forward with HR, what we do is we do follow the standard process that's already outlined,
Right.
where we have an exit conference
Right.
with management, with the department, to go over the initial draft, talk about any factual changes or the edits. And then from there, once we've cleaned it up a little bit, we send it back out to the manager's office and to the department director for a 30-day review. And that is per our standards that
And that's what we
we
did.
all have, and we have done that.
So
But
the step is just, was there, that it went through the manager's office, but it didn't go through like
Like you'd
the
like it.
meeting that you normally would
Well,
have.
if I could, just if this helps everybody, there's so much going on now that I'm having to delegate more and more decision-making authority to folks, that work for me. And in this case, this would have been one of those things that I really should have been a part of,
Right.
and it just wasn't because things were moving. And this gives me the opportunity to rectify that.
So I think that your proposal before 30 days, so we'll start that clock again for the 30-day management review, give them a chance to be able to finish that, and just back up the process one step and go, and then
Yeah,
go
sure.
forward.
No, that's
We'll go
perfectly
with your
fine.
first recommendation.
Sure.
Mhm.
So what I would suggest then is, we'll work with the manager's office on getting the changes in due time for your June audit committee meeting. If you choose in June to move it forward, then just know we'll be probably July, August cycle just because of the gap in this stuff, which is perfectly fine. I mean, from a staffing standpoint, it doesn't affect us because the work is done.
Right.
It's just.
And this is a smaller audit, it's a periodic
Yeah.
audit, these are ones that, as we work through, we knew that as we do this process, that we're gonna have to make some
Absolutely.
adjustments
Yeah.
to see that it works. And
Well, and our goal is to make it effective like we've all talked about today. And so if that means for it to be effective, we need to wait another month.
Yeah.
So be it.
And there's nothing earth shattering on here. Nobody's looking for it. Nobody needs it right away. They don't need it before another evaluation, so I think.
I appreciate y'all's consideration. Thank you.
All right, well, we will hold this then. And
We
then,
did do a
oh,
motion. Yeah.
well, I mean, at this point, I don't know if you necessarily need a motion because we're not
Well,
moving it
we
anywhere.
did have it on here. I think we should make it just.
Okay,
a
that
official
is,
motion
that's
to.
fine.
So, I need a motion. Well, actually, one of y'all probably can make the motion.
I want to make a motion to hold this vote on this audit
For
for
additional
another
management.
month for further
Additional management.
work with between the management and department.
I get a second.
And I second.
Okay, it's been motion and properly second that we hold this for another 30 days in order for the management to make their comments and adjustments. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed?
And Manager Williams, I just would like you to extend to the department that we totally appreciate their work and their thoughts and that is what we value.
You don't want any blowback, unnecessary blowback.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
said, my
this is
visceral
right, right,
response was, they're being very defensive. That was my visceral response, not intellectual. And then if I'm thinking an outside person looking at it, how would they feel? Why are they being rigid about that? And so,
And also, I guess even reiterate, we're saying that this is with the tax successor, that was outside of your realm. So this is
First one.
this is the first one of this type. So as a group, as a government, we are refining this process and the little hiccups we're having, right?
all of us,
But you mentioned the tax assessor, and sorry, but I did want to say that in the budget that I offered to the commission, we did follow the recommendation of the audit committee and the Office of Operational Analysis and propose a new tax assessor position. So even with the periodic audits, they're already bearing some fruit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for pointing that out.
just one more issue on this
Yeah.
before we move on this audit. So the training question for the state training requirements.
Yes, I
for the
did get an
PAD.
answer from the director on that.
Yeah,
So the director did clarify that TADS being a local BAC are subject to the training that we have. The Development Authority and the Industrial Development Authority, because those are not just local boards, you have members of the boards that are by charter, from other agencies and things like that, and are state mandated. That training does occur. The hired attorney for those boards actually does that as part of their duty, is maintain the training that those members go through from a state standpoint. So it is being tracked, just not by our office per se.
right, okay. And not
Yes.
by the economic development. They're not.
They work with the attorney. Again, I think for those two boards, they rely mostly on that attorney. That's what that attorney is hired for. For the Joint Development Authority, I think Economic Development does track that on their own through the state, but they're involved. They seem to be very aware of it. When I asked the question, there was an immediate response. They knew about it. So yes. Okay.
Thank you. And I guess we will move on to item number L, internal audit updates.
Actually, sorry, Commissioner, E is the FY25 audit.
I missed that.
No, that's all right. We got a lot of work plans on here today. So the FY25 audit work plan draft. I sent some initial documents to you all ahead of time. We're not looking for a vote today, but we certainly would look for that possibly in June to be able to start out the new fiscal year with our assignments and get running. But we've sort of followed the same process, and I'll admit that process is not the best it can be, but we're working towards it. We're working with the manager's office to hopefully fine tune that come the next time around. But we've gathered input from some of our commissioners. We reach out to our commissioners. We talked to the manager's office and certainly would look for the manager's input today as well, and come up with an initial list of topics. And we've graded them in that matrix that you even saw last year. So today's discussions center around sort of that initial ranking, that initial scoring. And then what I would anticipate from today's discussion is coming back to you in June with an actual work plan that you can approve that basically says, well, of the 10, here are the 2 or 3 that we're going to choose to go forward with in FY25. If you have any questions about the topics that we've put forward, please ask them today. I will say that the initial scoring and ranking that we did, that is not set in stone as to what we would recommend or even what you would recommend. That's just the way that it's scored based on our assessment of it. But for example, HCD, we delayed that one in this year's work plan. As you can see, it maybe didn't score number 1 in this next year's one, but I would strongly encourage us to pursue that one yet going into FY25. There's a couple other factors that I just want you to be aware of, and I've noted them in our agenda. Not only do you have the matrix, you have some brief descriptions that sort of indicate what we would think the scope and objectives would be for such audits. We've also made some auditor notes that are just sort of side conversations about, well, just keep this in mind or keep this point in your head. We also have to work in this year into the actual work plan is not just the audits we're going to conduct, but we need to take a comprehensive look at all of our time going forward. And that has to include now the follow-ups for both economic development and tax assessor. They're not going to be, a good amount of time, but nonetheless, they're going to take some staff time. We do have to be more cognizant of the impact of Peace Cobb. We didn't know last year what that impact would be, but we have a better gauge of it. And so we need to balance that. Any special projects or investigations. So whether it's just us being able to finally organize some of the documents that we have in storage and kind of come up with a comprehensive database, or also just some of those inquisitive topics that we get from commissioners or from staff that aren't necessarily full-blown audits, but certainly worthy of at least taking a quick look, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and saying, well, here's what we found. And if you feel more is needed, then we need to talk about this next year in terms of a work plan. But here's sort of the answer to your question that you posed. So there's some of those that we could potentially look at. And then just this process itself, this annual work plan development needs to be accounted for in the annual work plan. I mean, this is what should be a 3 to 4 month process, condensed into, our time as we can in between audits. And quite honestly, it doesn't give it the attention that it needs to. And I think there's a way for us to fine tune it by starting it earlier, incorporating mayor and commission feedback in a more timely fashion, but also then working with the manager's office, packaging a lot of that stuff, and then coming to you all and giving you more than one meeting to discuss it. Again, I know this year we're a little bit under a time crunch again, but our goal is to improve upon this next year. So we're working all that in. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have right now about some of those topics.
Kevin, can you review these 10 that are on there?
Sure.
Where did that initial list of 10 come from?
Sure. So the 10 is a combination of whether it was like HCD, for example, not accomplished in this past year's budget. Work plan. Also looking at the master list of audits that have been completed since unification. As you know, there's a lot of blank spaces. So certainly our goal is not to duplicate things if we don't have to, but we also want to start to tackle this list. So there's a combination of that in there. We also solicit input from the mayor and commission. So a lot of these topics have come from the mayor and commission. It's also from us as operational analysis staff, things that we've observed over the year that we feel that we keep an active list of topics that are worthy of at least consideration, knowing that they may not come to fruition. And then what I'd like to incorporate more, and again, Manager Williams is here, is working with the manager, especially next year, on any topics management may have that are of strong importance for us to potentially look at.
But in terms of the commission input on
Mhm.
this, did everything anyone put on there get in there, or did you have to have like two people recommend it for it to get on there?
No, what we did is we try to be respectful when we ask for comments. We want to take them seriously. We're not going to ask you otherwise if we're not going to consider it. But there were some topics that we maybe did take out. That it wasn't a lot, but it was something that honestly wasn't audit worthy. Like it was a question more than an audit, and we found the answer within about 2 days, and we just answered the question.
Okay.
But no, I mean, I would say 90 to 80% of what was submitted to us at least made it into this
Okay.
document. Sure. But the scoring reflects
I
that.
remember doing this now.
Oh, yeah, but I just was wondering if it needed to have like two people interested for it to get on this list, or if it was just any topic that could be an audit
Right.
that a commissioner's got in for the evaluation.
There weren't a lot. I mean, I'll say that.
Yeah.
I mean, as we know, y'all are busy and I don't always get responses, but at the same time, if we would have gotten 30, I would have probably gone that route to say, well, we're not going to produce a list of 30 to
Okay,
choose
okay.
from. We're going to narrow it down to about a dozen. And I think I would have gone more with your route of, popular
Okay,
topics
okay.
and things like that as well.
Just as something to know, how many responses did you get from us commissioners?
I want to say it was just under 50%.
So we can encourage that more.
Right,
next year.
I know I did it. Some other conditions, yeah. Any other questions again about the work plan draft?
So when we try to capture what we think in general we're gonna do, you wanna leave space in the work plan. I think we should put Peace Cup in the work plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we would do is acknowledge it. I mean, it's hard to,
I know it's hard to be finite about
Sure.
knowing and capturing it, but it's a consistently good portion of your
Sure.
time, and so that's we just sort out.
yes, and we can quantify, we have quantified that time.
And
Yeah.
then to put a spacer in there
Mhm.
for this one that you're gonna have something that you're gonna have to go after in the
Sure.
year, something that's gonna happen, something that's gonna need your
Yes.
attention. So I would say just to capture that blank, that extra portion in the work plan itself. The other thing I wanted to ask about, I know we had talked about it in our initial meetings, was contracting very technical or very comprehensive audits.
Mhm,
And what I see on here, the information technology one,
mhm.
and I suppose with the time frame that you put on here, you were thinking of a periodic audit for information technology. And
Yes.
you have that with software programs and subscriptions. I wonder if that might not be linked. But the concern that I have from the public concern that I have, as most people worry about, is cybersecurity issues with local IT. And then all the things that we went through with the pandemic and all the Zoom and all the changes. To me, not being a tech person, being a tech user, but not really somebody that designs and implements these programs, that cybersecurity now, this next generation with AI coming in, the cybersecurity issue is extremely technical. And I'm just wondering if this one might not be a target for a comprehensive audit, but focused on cybersecurity, not necessarily information technology in terms of what we do for public information and all that. That's really important. I think you guys can manage that really well, the management side and but the particular part of cybersecurity element of information technology, I think it might be timely to think about that being our first really contract one where we for the technical side of it, or the hard and soft systems that we have.
So what I would say is, I think you're right. I mean, certainly IT is an important topic. It has two of them just on this list alone. They were distinct in how we reviewed them. One was a periodic audit, like you said, more of what we've seen with tax assessor and economic development, sort of that quick look at your performance, your compliance, and your financials. The software program subscriptions, that wasn't necessarily cybersecurity. I'm not saying that it couldn't be a topic. That was more of the use of software for the government as a whole, and that comprehensive look at what are the different avenues we as departments go down with software and how much of that can be shared and efficiency, things like that. But no, you do have a good point about cybersecurity in general. And I think if that was to be an audit topic, we would certainly be able to bring in some level of expertise with that to help us. As you know, though, that also is going to be dependent on the budget and being able to outsource something like that. And so the mayor's budget did just come out. We did ask for some additional funding this year, and it looks like it's made its way in there for some outsourced services. I don't think it's going to be to the degree, though, that would cost. That said, it's nothing that we couldn't try to go forward either this next coming year or something like that.
I would say in conjunction with this, maybe to research that in a year and include that in terms of looking at how much what is the necessity, what's the need, how much it would cost, and the timing.
Yes.
I don't think we haven't been hacked, right? Nobody's gotten into our systems as far as I know.
Well, if I might, Chair, I think it's an excellent suggestion. One thing I want to caution everybody on is the public nature of this body, the documents, and I hear you, because we're depending on folks that you don't know to make sure that we're protected with some pretty an extensive amount of resources and information. And there have been times when I've wanted to tell the commission more about what we're doing, and I've been cautioned by our professionals, like, well, if you put that out there, then you kind of told them what we're doing. So I'm glad to hear that maybe this is something for next year, and it could be, Auditor, that we consult the attorneys under the guise of security and find out what can be protected. Because, like I said, there's nothing we should do that should withstand scrutiny, but what we give to the outside world and what we're working on could make us vulnerable.
And the manager makes a good point. Part of my training last week down in Savannah, I did government law. Cybersecurity came up, and actually now what they recommend anytime we talk about it, we go into executive session.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes,
I would hope that would be.
yes, but they have made that now. Cybersecurity, if you're going to have any public discussion, is it go into executive session for that? Because again, you don't want to give you want to give the bad players the gameplay.
But I mean, that's it. Can I ask a question to clarify that for me? Because it says, let's say as a public official and a county commissioner, I want there to be locks on the doors, right? But I don't put out a copy of what the lock looks like or how they're going to do it or what the alarm system is, of course, so I don't do that. So, I mean, just that discussion about the reassurance of, I mean, there can be some public discussion.
You can, but I think more about the plan.
The plan itself, yeah, of course. And the fact that a plan exists, that it's being reviewed, that there's a process. And I'd like to, I don't know if it's in there, but I would like to add the use of artificial intelligence, because I think that can have that is starting to have an effect on how the public is interacting with the commission. I know I don't know, because I'm not I am certain I've gotten comments that are AI generated, and it's not just individual comments, but we also have a lot of public input where we put surveys out there and such. And so, I'm very concerned about that, because once you lose credibility with the public input you're getting, then it's I have no credibility with the media, no credibility with the public input. It really weakens the the strength of how we can make decisions and move forward. So the artificial intelligence, I figure I think I found one article. So, you all can find more about how governments and local governments are dealing with AI and public input on that.
Sure. And what I can offer too is, I was at a conference recently as well, and it was an auditors conference, and it was predominantly about AI and things so. But what I would say is similar to what I think I've heard just now, is that may be one of these items for next year's work plan, where it's these investigative memos just to start out with, where we have a conversation as staff with management, with the attorney's office, with IT, about where we stand specifically with regard to cybersecurity and AI, And this doesn't have to take too long, but just sort of
Mhm.
gauge that reassurance, hopefully,
Mhm.
that we're doing all that we can, that we're aware of these topics, or we come back and say, well, it's the opposite. We're not maybe as prepared as we need to be, and
Mhm.
this should be something that's on the front. But that could be more of a quick 2-page memo, just not outlining a plan, not going into details, just this is what we looked at, and this is sort of what we discovered in general with regard to these two
Yeah.
topics. But we could certainly include something like that in the work plan for next year.
You can tell us, I can tell you all about it, but then I have to kill you, so.
Yeah.
Well, Auditor, I don't know if this is appropriate, and we're all learning
Sure.
together. It could be that another take on this is where there's some profiling done of threats and opportunities through the auditor's office, and that a missive is created that says we should be, whatever our plan is, it should address some of the,
Yeah.
make sure it address some of these things. And then the follow-on and the accountability would be to the commissioners in an executive session where we use those normative strategies or that should be being serviced in some form or fashion with the substantive response to that to the mayor
Yes.
commission. So
No, I would agree. I appreciate that. So I think what you'll see though, going into June meeting is, given these topics, given some of the scoring, I'll gladly take any input you may have over the next week or two. You can send me an email saying, this is what I feel about these topics. But more than likely, you're probably going to see a work plan from us that would include the one that we sort of passed on this past year, HCD, more than likely to start out the year. And then I would say, depending on the scale and the complexity of the next audit, either another 1 or 2 audits on top of that. So minimum 2, maximum of 3, along with 2 follow-ups, potentially a 1 to 2 page inquisitive investigative audit, and then the work plan itself, as well as the balance with Peace Cobb. And I think more than likely, although 2 to 3 audits maybe doesn't sound like a lot, when you throw it all together with that, it gets to be enough. So I think that's what you'll see from staff in June is a recommendation for 2 to 3 audits, and we'll sort of narrow those down for you. But if you have any suggestions or strong feelings about anything on this list, please be sure to let me know in the coming weeks ahead of time. So, okay. All right.
Anything else? So we'll move forward. Okay. Now, item F.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it. I know we're running on time. I'm gonna be quick. Calendar outlook again. We do have a meeting scheduled for June 4th. That is 2 days after the budget is supposed to be, I believe, approved by the mayor and commission. So we'll maybe have some more information on the budget, but I will say the mayor's budget has come out publicly as of yesterday. It's available online if you want to look at it. A lot of our work plan is also going to be in response to the budget. And I think the mayor's budget is certainly fair. I've talked to him about it with respect to our department. And we are looking at a potential full-time employee, but it may only be for half of the fiscal year next year, which again, I'm not going to argue with that. So we're happy to get any assistance that we can. And if that's the case, though, we'll certainly make sure that that's reflective of our work plan. Also, from a workload standpoint with Peace Cobb, I do have some of those March and April numbers. It's been pretty consistent to start the calendar year. We were gearing up at the tail end of 2023, and we've really hit the ground running as a committee starting in January. And on average, each month, we are averaging close to 80 to 90 hours of staff time for Peace Cobb. And so, over 100 emails related to Peace Cobb, things like that a month. And so it's manageable, but at the same time, it's not like it wasn't at the end of 2023. We're certainly getting our work done with relation to Peace Cobb. So all that said,
So would that be, could I say that is equal to have a full-time person at this time.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, although we all contribute and cross-train
Yeah.
to those 80 hours on average, predominantly that has been my time. And so, yes, I mean, it's fair to say that, roughly 50% of my time a month is dedicated towards that.
So I think in your budget recommendation goes for another position, I believe, in a part-time.
Well, no, it was the full-time position that has made the mayor's recommended budget, but it is likely to occur first in the second half of the fiscal year from a funding standpoint.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
July 1.
January.
No, January, yes. So again, I'll
It's
talk
only
to the
half
mayor.
the salary for this next year.
Correct. Yes, that's correct. But again, we're happy to take the help that we can get, and we're not gonna argue about that. And so certainly if that makes approval come January, we'll be looking for another management analyst. So
I guess, while we're waiting in January, if we're gonna put it in,
Because it saves half the salary in the budget.
okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
And I had got, about,
no, yeah,
you and I had talked about it.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
Trying to get a full time. I was hoping soon we get them on the better, so.
Right,
Oh, sure.
right.
No, I
But
understand.
that's happens a lot.
yeah.
Okay.
It's progress. I'll take it one way or another. But that is sort of what we've got going forward now. We'll see you all hopefully in June. We'll look to maybe approve a work plan in June. We'll look to hopefully approve an economic development audit report in June as well. And then I can't say for certain, it's just going to depend on these next couple of weeks with regard to HR, whether or not we would need a July meeting. If there's any business to actually be conducted, or if that would go into August, but we can maybe talk about it a little bit more at the June.
And
meeting.
just for FYI, I think we're taking off the last 2 weeks. of
That's right.
June, and then the first 2 weeks of July.
Okay.
Right.
Correct, so.
Okay.
For FYI, so I think
Sure.
be mindful of that.
Well, I mean, quite honestly, that we do want to respect that. So I think we'll probably go forward with the fact that we're not going to meet as a committee in July.
Yeah.
And I think Ms. Higgins, you maybe mentioned something about August.
You will be traveling.
How is it the regularly
The
scheduled meeting?
first 2 weeks, yeah.
Oh, the first 2 weeks.
in August,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll certainly, we can talk about that more, whether or not you're comfortable with us planning around that, or would just like us to go forward if we do have to meet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it probably should be okay. Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. No, but we'll be mindful of that as well. So, all right.
All right, well,
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?